Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Word Slingers. Today's guest is B.A. Turner.
How you doing?
Pretty good. We had some technical difficulties early on, so that's why we're a little late. Sorry about that. How you doing, B.A.? We've never talked before. This is our first time meeting. It's our first time talking because we didn't get a chance to talk before.
Yep,
Uh,
yep, yep.
um,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
tell me a little bit about yourself. How did you get started into comics?
yeah. So my kind of introduction to comics is a bit unique. I'm, I guess, a novelist by nature, but I grew up in a small farm town. There were no comic shops anywhere nearby, so of course, I saw cartoons and such, but I had never actually had a physical comic book growing up. And once I got really into TV shows like Smallville, before I got into college, that's when I got really interested in characters like the Green Arrow, Deathstroke, and started collecting comics throughout college. And once I had written a few novels and reached out to some comic artists to get some cover art, once I saw some of those characters come to life, I just got addicted to that process, and I was like, I needed to see more characters, and so I decided to do a mini comic for my novel series just to introduce all the major and supporting characters and just get to experience all those characters get put onto paper per se. And now I'm writing a full script for the first issue, and yeah, just excited to make a bunch of comics hopefully in the future. So yeah.
Oh yeah, that's awesome. So how did you get started writing in the first place? You said you wrote novels before.
Yeah, yeah. Really I just kind of stumbled into it. Um, I had an idea for my story probably a good 15 years ago, just kind of came to me in a dream, just this, gargoyle hovering over the city of Detroit looking for crime, and just kind of sat on it for years. Never thought, I could do anything with it really. And, I was going through a rough period in my life and just needed some sort of outlet. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to sit down and just start writing. And I just took that idea and I just ended up falling in love with creating the story. And, um, ended up doing something I didn't expect I could do. And, that kind of was therapy in a way for a good 5 years as I wrote the two novels. And then now doing the comic side of things, it's like, it's therapeutic, but it's that thrill of creation that, it's different from, I guess, the prose side of things. Being able to see what you can do not just with dialogue and text, but with the art. How can you really make an impact on someone visually? And so I'm really enjoying that side of things now.
Right. Yeah, it's not all on you as a writer. It's on the artist as well to tell the story visually. That's really cool.
Hmm. Hmm.
So did you get any kind of formal training like before you started writing novels, or did you just jump right in? It's just something you wanted to do, and so you did it.
Just jumped right in. I mean, like a lot of indie creators, right? I just learned from reading, as well as watching films. I wasn't the type of person that just read prose novels. I would read comics, I'd watch film, TV shows, try to get inspiration and, learn methods of storytelling from several mediums. And so, for me, it was just really consuming a lot of content and finding what really hit with you. And then trying to see, how can I make the impact on readers that those writers made on me, right? Whether it was through their characters or how they told their stories. And so, it was really just, learning from practice and from studying.
Right. That's cool. Yeah, you're right. It's kind of that way in the indie space. A lot of us just kind of learn on our own, and
Hmm.
we're just here because we love the medium. We love the
Yep.
craft.
Hmm. Yep. Yeah. And, thing too is I think you get to a point in your life where, of course, growing up, you might love Batman, for example. Or, like I still love
Yeah,
Batman,
just a
clearly,
little
but
bit. Yeah.
it's like you get that urge to create your own, character that could be just as inspirational or impactful on people. And because I mean, some people like doing fan fiction, but I've never had any interest in that. So it's like you just love to be able to create a character that someone would remember and might want to put up on their wall. It's kind of
Right.
a cool dream.
Oh yeah, definitely. I can totally relate to that.
Mm.
So, is there anything you learned about writing novels along the way that transferred over to writing comics? Is there anything that's different? Anything you had to adjust to?
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge adjustment to translate a novel into a comic. Because obviously in a novel, you can be super detail oriented with your text. And so at first, when I started writing my script, it's really difficult to literally have to trim the fat per se, because you're like, oh, I don't want to get rid of that part of the paragraph or that piece of dialogue because I love it so much. But it's a matter of how can I convert an entire paragraph or several paragraphs into some inner monologue or a little bit of dialogue or maybe narration, depending on what your kind of style is for writing the comic. And I actually found it to be really exciting, because you're limited on space for text. It's all about making it as impactful and powerful as possible. So it really makes you become more creative. So you can be like, how can I really help folks with some inner monologue feel what the character is feeling? So you really got to make that one sentence or two sentence hit them hard. And so it's fun to try to convert it in that manner. And when you're reading comics that inspire you, like for me, like Dark Knight Returns, Killing Joke, things of that nature, seeing how Miller and Moore were able to take just a couple little boxes of inner monologue or just a couple pieces of dialogue to really make you feel something. It's like, how can I do that? And so you just apply that to your prose and just try to find a way to kind of break up the novel to where you're like, okay, I can do this amount in of pages in a novel into my comic, and then just start laying it out. And then you of course have to work with an artist to figure out, well, how much real estate do you need for some of these sections? How many panels will you need? So that's the challenging part. You have unlimited range in a novel, right? You can write as many words as you want. Doesn't cost you anything, just time. But when you have an artist and you have to pay that artist, that colorist, that letterer, that changes things significantly because it impacts your budget. So you have to really learn to work within your budget and within your page count. And that may mean when you're translating it from a novel, like, okay, I may only be able to cover a couple chapters. And I got to make sure that, you get enough into that first issue to where there's closure, to where it leaves them wanting more. So that it's a challenge to figure out how to really break that up because you don't want to cram in a 300-page novel into a 40-page comic. It's probably not going to be very succinct. Um, so yeah, it's challenging, but it's fun. I'm really enjoying it.
Yeah, definitely. So when you're writing a comic book, because you have to sacrifice a lot, of your novel, um,
Mhm.
what's the most important thing to you that you're going after? Is it character? Is it theme? Is it plot?
The huge benefit is right the story or the plot and the character development's done, right? So it's just a matter of how do I translate this? And for me, it's a mixture. I want a powerful storyline that is unique and fresh, but also familiar, right? I don't want to just create another Batman. I don't want to just create another Watchmen, right? But I want people to be like, this kind of feels like some of these different properties, right? But the character has unique abilities or a unique mindset, or moral code that makes it stand out. And so I'm really trying to focus on the inner monologue and the dialogue, because that's what will make the characters hit home. And that without properly relaying those, it doesn't matter how good your storyline is or how cool your characters are. If you can't get that kind of relayed to to your readers properly through the text, um, you're going to rely way too much on the art. And so, yeah, it's just finding that balance. But yeah, I really want it to be character driven and to really kind of drive home a few themes of, you know, for mine, it's kind of unique because I have like psychological horror that ties in some of the Lovecraftian Alan Moore styles of writing, and then just a really gritty vigilante. So I really want to drive home, how unique this character is compared to other vigilantes, and just make him relatable to the reader as well, so that they want to, continue to read about that character. I don't want it to just be a one shot. I want it to continually, fun so that they can have several issues and learn more and more about the character as they go on.
That's cool. So you're planning like an ongoing series then. Like,
Yeah, I mean, with how long the novel series is so far, I mean, I could see, I mean, at this rate, easily doing 10 issues of
yeah,
floppies. Or if, the budget's there someday, maybe doing, a couple longer, maybe graphic novel style adaptations. But, of course, with us being indie, you got to start small and work your way up. So start with
yeah,
a floppy and see how that's received, and kind of go from there. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of runway with the story, and I have planned, additional novels in the works that are kind of indirect spin-offs that introduce new characters. So again, that could also kind of branch out into other comic issues. So I'm one of those people that, like, I have one property. That's all I think about. That's all I want to work on. I don't really want to create different universes, do different genres at the moment. Like, I want to do everything I can with this storyline just because it means so much to me. So
that's really cool. That was gonna be my next question: is if you had any other books you wanted to work on, or if you were just gonna focus on this property.
yeah, I mean, with comics and only being a writer, I mean, if a cool opportunity presented itself, I wouldn't necessarily turn it away. But luckily with a comics script, it doesn't typically take you know several months or years to create it. So you can get your scripts done well in advance, right? I could
Right.
probably get the 10 scripts done in the time that the first issue is actually fully drawn and lettered. um, so I'll be kind of balancing my time of, well, once the script's done for the first issue and I'm working closely with the artists on all the panels and just working out the kinks on that, I'll probably start working on a novel and kind of balance them throughout time. So
Yeah, that's really cool. Do you picture yourself selling out in the future? Like, hey, Netflix, you can have this for $1 million,
it
or
would
do you want to just keep
depend.
it indie?
I mean, the perfect scenario, right, is if you could have something like that happen to where they'd still let you, right, crowdfund some comics.
Right.
But if, like, it's crazy, but if Netflix ever did have interest in the storyline, and I could get assurance, right, that they would have a proper director and writer for it, and that they wouldn't make drastic changes to the story. I mean, I absolutely would be on board with that. I mean,
Yeah.
that would be the dream, is like, hey, if a director I really respect, or a writer, could take that and turn it into a film. I mean, that'd be amazing.
Yeah.
Um, and I mean, I'm sure I'd still have the ability to make more comics and more novels in the universe. So, but yeah,
Yeah. No, I'm right there with you, man. That's what it's all about, right?
but I would be one of those people that, like, if I was in that scenario, I would literally have stipulations where it's like, well, no, like, I would want to approve if I even had the ability, right? To be like, hey, here's my short list of directors and writers, right? Because there are writers out there that have butchered films, or directors, and I would hate, even if I made good money, I would sacrifice that money and hold on to it until it could get in the right hands, because it would be so painful to, like, be so excited and then you see them adapt it and it sucks and you'd be like, "No."
Right.
Like, uh, the money would feel guilty at that point. So
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, and then your, like, property is ruined in the minds of, the general public.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
Yep. So it's like, no, I'd be like, no, here's like four directors, like reach out to them first, see if they're interested. Let me talk to them. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's the dream. That would be
yeah.
awesome.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So, your character's kind of a mix between Lovecraft and Batman in a way, would you say?
Yeah, for the main character Dread Knight, who's the gargoyle, I would say it's the Dark Knight Returns mixed with Hellboy.
Okay.
So pretty vigilante who is mortal, but also is tied to kind of celestial power, right? Biblical lore, things of that nature. Whereas the villain, Incubus, the one that looks similar to Cthulhu, but is actually a human, that's more of a Lovecraftian style character, not because of appearance, but because what he does in the story and his influence on his, I guess, super soldiers is more tied to that psychological terror, right? Entering their subconscious, mind bending, those kinds of things. So really exploring that side of things. So it's got some blends, and then some of the other vigilantes are kind of more standard, just human vigilantes. You have a good cop who's stuck in an evil police force, right? Trying to figure out what's going on, willing to do what he can to try to change things. And so, yeah, it's definitely has influences from several different creations, whether it's comics or films. But again, I took, comics, films, TV shows, all my inspirations, and like everyone, right? I just kind of
Yeah,
mashed them up, played with them, created my own characters, and now I have my own story, so
that's awesome.
yep.
What's your favorite Lovecraft story?
You know what? It's funny. I really don't have a particular one. I'm actually not a huge Lovecraft reader. I just really, really appreciate the psychological
Mm,
aspect of things. Um, so I've read bits and pieces of different works of his just to get that influence, but I was never like a real like Lovecraftian or Lovecraft reader, because
all right, interview over. We're
I,
done.
I was I was
Yeah,
too into, vigilantes and I mean comic book characters.
right.
Um, but there aren't a ton of, I guess, comic book storylines that have done a great job incorporating that side of things from Lovecraft. And so, um, yeah, like I said, I take bits and pieces from different things, but things like Dark Knight Returns, Zack Snyder films, Christopher Nolan films, those ones I got like a ton of inspiration and creative juice from.
That's really cool. Do you want to share your campaign? Do you want to pull it up?
Ah, yeah, sure.
We'll take a look at it.
Right. Share my screen here. All right. So yeah, this is on Indiegogo as well as Fund My Comic as well. Right now we're just over 13,000 across the two. These two novels and the mini comic, they were done by the end of the 60-day kind of main campaign. So now being in demand, everything's ready. It ships out within 2 days, and yeah, there's a lot of different things on the campaign. The two novels both are around 250 pages each, straight prose, but with comic book style wraparound covers. There's also a duology version right down here, which has both books in one with this beautiful Joe Ball black and white cover. And
Nice.
when you turn it around, it actually works in both directions. So it's a
That's really
really
cool.
unique thing kind of see here is, you have kind of the normal cover, and then when you flip it around, the action works in both directions, and some of the characters
Nice.
orientation work in both directions. So it's it's a fun version. It's a bit cheaper too because it's printed in black and white, not two
Nice.
separate print runs. And then yeah, the mini comic, again, the purpose of this is just to introduce all the characters. It's 15 pages. It depicts some of the major scenes so that, while you're reading the book, you know exactly what these characters look like. You also
Yeah.
have refresher information to where if you put the book down and instead of being distracted while you're reading to try to remember, how did I picture this character or what information about them did I maybe forget? This mini comic breaks down all the characters and gives you exactly what they look like. So it's just a fun way to make it a more immersive novel reading experience because most novels don't have any art. Even their cover art doesn't really do justice for the characters or doesn't really introduce you to much of the story. So I kind of wanted to do something unique in that regard and make it more fun. So that was the purpose of that. And again, it was just for my own reasons. I wanted to see all of these characters through art. So let's see. So yeah, here's just some kind of more examples. Here's one of the. I do have a variant cover for the mini comic here. So a painted version by Skunk Artworks. I
It's
still
nice.
have the original art piece as well on the campaign. Just some of the interior examples from some of the scenes. And then there's also a black and white art book as well. That's just all the art in black and white, just the virgin versions of that. So, all in all, kind of the best bang for your buck for folks is the Let's Get Physical option here, which is all three mini comics, both of the novels. You get 4 free laminated prints, 2 free laminated and oversized bookmarks, as well as a encased trading card, all for $50. But there's also the options to just get a mini comic or get one of the novels or just the novels. There's digital novel options. So anything you can think of, the options are there. There's a kind of a custom retro lunchbox. There's also a puzzle. There's aluminum signs. There's posters. There's anything you can pretty much think of outside of clothing. I have on there. So a lot of options. Try to make it as affordable as I could as an indie, and
Right.
have some fun kind of freebies that people can get with it. So yeah,
Well, that's awesome, man. That's really cool.
thank you.
Yeah, and anybody who watches this later on, the link is down in the description. You can go
Thank
straight
you.
to his Indiegogo. So tell me about your writing process. What's that like when you sit down to write?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's much different when I'm doing a novel versus a comic. For the novels, yeah, I took kind of I mean, maybe it's not that unique of an approach, but I immediately had the beginning and the ending figured out before I had kind of the meat of the story figured out. I had the kind of two of the main characters that kind of open up the book and they end the book together. So I wrote out kind of the first two chapters and the last chapters first. And then as I would go along, I would kind of write certain chapters and certain scenes out and then just put the kind of the pieces of the puzzle together. And I would typically write a few chapters, take a break, and kind of go through and do an editing pass, and then write two new chapters, and then I'd edit all of those chapters, and I just keep going back and edit and kind of revise them as I'm reading other books and learning from those. And so it took me about 5 years to write both novels, and then I did a year of just pure editing, working with an editor, working with a writing coach, and then I mean the mini comic, obviously with that just being more of kind of oversized trading cards, it was more just the Photoshop work, doing the lettering, right, working with the artist on the layouts and all that. But for the comic process, it's nice because I can literally look at my novel, break it apart, and just do that translation. I'm not doing all that initial brainstorming, creating the character, so it's much easier in that regard. And so again, it's just condensing the dialogue, condensing the scenes, and translating those into inner monologue and panelization. So really for the comic, I just sit down and I just kind of lay it out with, here's the general description of the scene with some details of appearances, backgrounds, and then I'll just, relay out all the dialogue in that panel and just do it kind of in a guesstimate panel by panel layout. And then once, I start working with the artist, then we'll start tweaking it, seeing which panels could be condensed or if we need to add panels to the page. So, but again, it's a learning experience, and I'm not just going to write this comic by myself. I'm not a proven comic writer, so I'm not just going to jump into this and assume I can just translate this. It's going to be great. You know, I'm going to work with another writer on this comic, make it as fine tuned as possible, and make sure that I cover all my bases from the get go. So.
Well, that's awesome. I don't know if you've read a whole lot of indie comics, but have you?
To an extent, I have a
Like,
huge TBR list right now
nice.
that I need to catch up on. But because right now, I'm really going back and studying, right, Dark
Mhm.
Knights, Dark Knight Returns, all Frank Miller's work, Alan Moore's work, but studying it, right, trying to pull even more inspiration out of it, learn from it, and then go back and just ponder on my story. And so I'm not spending as much time as I would like, reading the indie comics that I have piled up and indie novels. But, you know, once I'm done with the script, that's where I'm going to go through and learn from those indie comics, right? See where I can get some good kind of experiences from them, and also try to see, where maybe I can learn in the other regard, like, oh, maybe some folks missed out on certain things. I need to make sure that I don't do that in my book.
Right.
And so, but yeah, that's something I need to do more of. So I've only gotten through maybe a handful of them in the recent months, but that was more for just right, get through them, enjoy them, not overthink them, just
Right.
experience them. Um, but I'm gonna be doing more of a kind of uh, particular read through them this next time because I need to
Yeah.
learn from all of them. So.
Yeah. Well, the reason I asked that was because my next question was going to be, what do you feel is missing out in the indie field that you think we could improve on?
Um, I think the main thing is just unique characters and unique stories. You do have, a couple really unique creations in the indie sphere, where I would say, like Cyberfrog, for example, right? Cyberfrog, though it's been around for 20, 30 years, right? It's a truly unique character. It's got a really unique concept and a unique world, so it sticks out. And obviously, the art makes it stick out. Same thing with like Inglorious Rex, Shane Davis's series, right? It's a unique twist on some, famous inspirations, and it's got some big monsters, some great art that really stick out, right? It's not your run of the mill Flash copycat or Superman
Mhm.
copycat. And I think that's what's wrong in the space is there's too many copy and paste characters where they just kind of change up the designs, but some of the abilities are the same. And so there needs to be some more really unique stories and characters that make them not even feel indie, right? That make them feel um, not necessarily professional, right? Because indies can be professional books, in my
Right.
opinion, but make them kind of stand out even compared to mainstream books. So I think that's part of it. Um, the other part of it really is just I'd say kind of just inconsistency, right? There are folks that just jump right into it, that don't work with an editor, they don't work with a co-writer, and part of that obviously can be budgeting, but you gotta. I think some folks just need to kind of slow down a little bit and try to perfect it a bit before they. And it's the same with novelists, right? They'll see like, oh, Amazon will publish this, just like,
Mhm.
hey, I can crowdfund this, and so they're in a rush just to get their story out there to folks. And a lot of times they'll do that, and then it doesn't go as well as they'd hope, and then they a couple years later, like, well, man, my cover art really wasn't where should have been now that I look at all these other campaigns or books that are doing well. And so, and I learned that personally by kind of rushing my first book, putting it on Amazon, and then I'm like, the cover's not even clicking with me properly. I'm like, not clicking with me as the creator. I should have slowed down. I should have been patient, but you want people to read your story. So I
Right.
think patience is one of the other, kind of struggles. And then I guess overall in the indie community, right? It's that community feel. There's
Mm.
always issues with cohesiveness. You have some folks, like what you're doing right now, that are really helping people, doing interviews, getting projects in front of people, and just trying to help everyone. And in the end, it helps yourself as well. I want everyone to benefit in the indie community. I want the whole community of indie comics to get exposure. The more that happens, the more it's likely that some of them get bigger, that they get attention, by Netflix or the mainstream or whatever. But there are some folks that come into it and they don't want to help others; they just want to benefit from it, and that's it. And so, yeah, there's always kind of a push and pull there. I think that creates more friction than benefit. So.
Right. What advice would you give to anybody who's up and coming right now and wants to jump into comics?
Yeah, just say be patient. Don't rush it. Really find some specific works that inspire you, that you want to make books that have just as much of an impact. Learn from those and be realistic with your goals. Um, Everyone's gonna see, oh, that person's raising 500,000 or that person's raising 100,000 or 20,000. Don't have stars in your eyes. Got to be realistic, especially with your first project. Um, Listen to other crowdfunding folks that do give advice and kind of, help relay, like, hey, this is kind of an idea of how much things cost. Here's some of the struggles that you might have with printing or working with printers. So try to really learn and study not just works, but also the crowdfunding space, um, and the process of doing a campaign and doing a comic, so that you can maximize its potential. Because the worst thing is that you get in over your head, you spend way too much money and you don't fulfill on your campaign, or you purposely put a low amount and you fulfill, but you still don't have the money to finish your
Mm.
project. A lot of risks when it comes to crowdfunding. So, and understanding where your limits are, and be reasonable, but um, do your best to make the best book you can.
Right. No, that's really good. Is there anything I didn't ask you that I should have asked you, or anything that you want to share?
Sorry, could you say you cutting out?
Is there anything that I didn't ask you that I should have asked you, or is there anything that you'd like to share?
Not really in particular. I mean, my biggest, obviously, this is dominated by comics, and rightfully so. So it's really just asking people to maybe do a change in pace and give a novel a shot, and see if this style of combining a mini comic gives you a unique experience. And maybe this can be that book in between comics, or campaigns that you're waiting on, that you could really enjoy and really go into detail on the characters and the backstories. And so really just asking folks to take a shot on some novel, and hopefully get them in advance of the comic release. Hopefully get these characters in advance.
Awesome. Well, BA, I appreciate you coming on and appreciate your time.
Yeah, appreciate
It
you
was,
having me, man.
yeah, it's really great talking to you. So
Likewise.
yeah, yeah. Everybody, my campaign is also still live on Fund My Comic, and I'm gonna close out with the trailer. And the link for
Oh
that
yeah.
is also in the description.
Yeah, definitely.